Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the English Talk community, where we turn your everyday experiences into powerful tools for learning English. I'm Julia, your host, and I'm really glad you're here with me today. Whether you're listening from the heart of Berlin, the busy streets of São Paulo, a quiet corner in Seoul, or somewhere in between, I want you to know, this space is for you. We're all here to improve together, and no matter your level, you're already doing something amazing by showing up. Let me start today with a simple question. Have you ever watched an entire TV series in English, maybe even more than one, and still felt nervous or blocked when trying to speak? Maybe you've binge-watched your favorite show, laughed at the jokes, followed the story, and thought to yourself, I understand everything. But then, when it's time to actually speak with someone in English, your mind goes blank, or you can't find the words. Sound familiar? If it does, you're definitely not alone. This is one of the most common experiences I hear about from English learners around the world. And it's frustrating, right? You're spending hours with English content. You're listening, you're understanding, you're even enjoying it. But the speaking part still feels like a mountain you just can't climb. That's exactly why today's episode is going to be so important. Because the truth is, the way you watch, listen, and engage with English content can either help you improve faster or keep you stuck. I want to show you how movies, series, and podcasts can become your greatest allies when learning English. Not just something you passively consume, but real practical tools that help you think in English, speak with more confidence, and sound more natural. And don't worry, we're not going to talk about studying in a boring way. We're going to explore how to enjoy the process, how to choose content that actually works for your level, and how to turn entertainment into a language workout without even feeling like you're studying. Before we dive deeper, let's do something important together. If this podcast has helped you at any point, if you've learned something useful or felt more confident with your English, take a moment to follow or subscribe to the English Talk community. It might seem like a small action, but it really helps us reach more people just like you. And when you support this show, you're also supporting others around the world who want to improve their English in a fun and meaningful way. It's how we grow this global community. One listener, one learner, one conversation at a time. And while you're at it, feel free to give this episode a like or share it with a friend who's learning English too. Maybe someone who always watches shows in English but still says, I just don't get why I can't speak fluently. That person might find today's episode exactly what they need to hear. And remember, learning is better when we do it together. Now let me take a moment to say something that's really important to me. This podcast isn't here to make you feel bad about your mistakes. It's not about chasing perfection or speaking like a native speaker in every sentence. It's about progress. It's about finding tools that work for you and making small, smart changes that help you feel more confident day by day. Watching a movie or listening to a podcast is not just entertainment. It's a chance to be exposed to natural English in real-life contexts. But we need to go a bit deeper than just watching or listening. We need to understand how to use those experiences to improve our skills. And don't worry if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of time. You don't need to watch hours of content every day. Sometimes, just a 5-minute podcast clip or a short scene from a series can give you exactly the boost you need. It's all about quality over quantity, and the way you interact with the language matters much more than how many minutes you spend with it. If you've ever felt guilty because you're not doing long grammar lessons or memorizing vocabulary lists, stop. The real power is in using the English you already love in a smarter way. You might be thinking, okay, but I've been watching English shows for years. Why am I still struggling to speak? That's a great question. The answer is usually this. Passive watching doesn't train you to speak. It helps with comprehension, sure, but without interaction, repetition, and speaking practice, your brain doesn't make the connections it needs to produce language. It's like watching someone play the piano for hours and hoping you'll be able to play too. It just doesn't work that way. You need to engage with the content. Think about the last time you heard a word in a movie and thought, oh, that's interesting, but then never used it again. That word probably disappeared from your memory in a few days. But what if you paused, repeated it out loud, and used it in a sentence later that day? Suddenly, that word becomes yours. That's what we're going to explore today. How to take your favorite content, movies, series, podcasts, and transform it into real, practical language input that stays with you. I also want you to know that learning this way is fun. You get to choose what you enjoy. You don't need to force yourself to watch academic videos or follow complicated textbooks if that's not your style. Do you love romantic comedies? Great. Watch them in English. Are you into crime dramas or documentaries? Perfect. That content can teach you more than you think. And the same goes for podcasts. Whether you enjoy interviews, storytelling, or motivational talks, there's something out there that fits your taste and level. As we go through this episode, I'll share some stories from learners around the world who've made real progress by using this method. People just like you, who found a way to connect entertainment and language learning in a way that actually worked. You might hear their stories and realize, hey, I can do that too. And that's exactly what I want you to feel. So, get ready to see your favorite shows and podcasts in a totally new light. This episode is not just about improving your English. It's about unlocking a new way to learn that feels natural, enjoyable, and powerful. You know, before we dive into all the exciting ways you can improve your English with movies, series, and podcasts, I want to take a little pause. Just a moment to breathe, relax, and share something a bit more personal. I don't know about you, but today was one of those days when everything seemed to take twice as long. I tried to make tea and forgot the kettle was on. Twice. Then I got distracted reading messages from some of our wonderful listeners and completely lost track of time. It's funny how the smallest things can throw us off, isn't it? Maybe your day's been a bit hectic too. Or maybe it's the opposite. You're listening during a quiet moment, maybe walking to work, cleaning up the kitchen, or winding down after a long day. However your day has been, I just want to say that I'm really glad we get to spend this time together. That's one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast. Even though I can't see your face, I know that somewhere out there, there's a person listening who's doing their best to learn, grow, and become more confident. And if that's you, I see you, even from here. Sometimes we focus so much on progress that we forget to recognize the effort we're already putting in. Just by pressing play and being here with me, you're doing something powerful. You're not giving up. You're showing up for yourself. And that matters a lot. One thing I've noticed over the years is that English learners often carry a lot of pressure on their shoulders. Maybe you felt it too. The pressure to speak perfectly. The pressure to understand every word. The pressure to perform, even when you're still figuring things out. I've heard from people in Tokyo, Milan, Cape Town, New Delhi, and Buenos Aires, and you know what? This feeling is the same everywhere. The self-doubt, the hesitation, the question, am I doing enough? It's so common. So here's what I want to say today. It's okay to laugh at your mistakes. It's okay to forget a word mid-sentence. It's okay to not know everything. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to connect. And sometimes, when we stop taking ourselves so seriously, that's when real learning happens. Like when you mess up a word in front of someone and end up laughing together. That moment sticks with you much longer than a grammar rule ever could. I remember once I was talking with a listener from Madrid who told me he accidentally said kitchen instead of chicken during lunch with some colleagues. Everyone burst out laughing, including him, and you know what? He never forgot the word chicken again. These small human moments, they teach us so much more than textbooks ever can. And they remind us that we're all human. We're allowed to make mistakes, to be imperfect, and to keep going anyway. I think language is really about connection. Not just about getting everything right, but about sharing who you are. Your thoughts, your sense of humor, your curiosity. It's about telling a story, asking questions, or simply being present in a conversation. And that can happen whether your grammar is perfect or not. Fluency is not about speaking fast. It's about speaking freely, without fear holding you back. So take a breath, relax your shoulders, maybe even smile a little. This isn't a test. This is just a moment for you to listen, to learn, and to enjoy. Think of me as a friend sitting across from you with a cup of coffee, talking about English in a way that feels natural and real. There's no pressure here. Just a warm space where you can take in the language without judgment, without fear, and maybe even with a few laughs along the way. Some of our listeners have told me they play these episodes while jogging through the park in Copenhagen, while waiting for the bus in Jakarta, or while making breakfast in Nairobi. Others listen during their commute, or when they're winding down in bed, just before sleep. However you're joining today, I hope this feels like something familiar, something that fits into your life without stress or complication. That's how language learning should feel, like a part of your real life, not something separate from it. If you've been carrying a little bit of doubt or frustration lately, I want to remind you that it's completely normal. Learning a language is not a straight line. It's messy and funny and sometimes a little weird. One day you feel like a genius, and the next you can't remember how to say towel. But that's okay. That means you're doing it right. You're growing. And growth isn't always smooth. It's just always worth it. I also want you to know that whatever your reason is for learning English, it's valid. Maybe it's for your job. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to understand your favorite podcast or talk to someone you care about. Whatever it is, hold on to that reason. Keep it close, because on the hard days, it'll remind you why you started. And on the good days, it'll show you how far you've come. So today, as we explore all the fun and practical ways to learn English through movies, series, and podcasts, I want you to keep something in mind. It's okay to enjoy this. You don't need to feel guilty about learning through the things you love. You're not wasting time. You're investing in yourself, in your skills, your confidence, and your future. This is your space, your time. And I'm just really honored that you've chosen to spend a little of it with me. Let's enjoy the ride together, laugh when we need to, and never forget that every single word you learn is a step forward. Before we keep going, I want to take just a moment to talk directly to you, not just as a listener, but as a part of something much bigger. You see, when I created this podcast, my goal wasn't just to teach English. I wanted to create a space where people from all over the world could come together, learn in a way that feels natural, and feel like they're not alone in the journey. And today, by listening, you've become a part of that mission. You're part of the English Talk community. Now I have a small favor to ask you. If you're enjoying this episode, if you've ever learned something useful from this podcast, or if you just like having a space where learning English feels simple and human, I'd love for you to subscribe to the show. And if you're on a platform that lets you leave a like or a review, please take a second to do that too. It may seem like a small action, but it makes a huge difference. Let me explain why. When you subscribe, when you leave that like or share this episode with someone you know, you're helping us reach more people who really need this kind of support. There are so many learners out there, students in big cities like Istanbul, São Paulo, or Bangkok, who are trying their best to improve their English but don't know where to start. Maybe they feel stuck or overwhelmed. Maybe they've tried traditional methods and nothing seems to work. And then one day, because of a comment or a simple share from someone like you, they find this podcast. And suddenly things start to make sense. That's what you're contributing to. You're not just a passive listener. You're helping build a real community. One where English doesn't have to be scary or complicated. One where people can learn through stories, through conversation, and through everyday experiences. That's powerful. And it's only possible because people like you decide to support it. We don't have sponsors. We don't interrupt the episodes with ads. And the reason we're able to keep it that way, to keep everything focused on you and your learning, is because of the support from our own listeners. That support doesn't have to be financial. Honestly, just subscribing, liking, or telling a friend makes all the difference. It's how we stay independent, how we stay accessible, and how we keep the episodes free for anyone, anywhere in the world. Think about it. Maybe right now, there's a young woman in Warsaw who just started learning English for a new job. Or a father in Manila who wants to speak more confidently with his children who go to an international school. Maybe there's a student in Nairobi who dreams of studying abroad but feels nervous about their speaking skills. These are real people, just like you, with hopes, goals, and challenges. And you can help them simply by clicking a button, simply by being an active part of this podcast's growth. And honestly, there's something really beautiful about that. Learning a language can feel lonely sometimes, especially when you don't have people around you who understand the process. But here, you're not alone. You're part of a group of thousands of learners from cities like Berlin, Seoul, Johannesburg, and Toronto. People who tune in regularly, who share their stories with us, who laugh at the same language mistakes, and who celebrate each little victory together. When you subscribe, you're not just saying, I like this. You're saying, I believe in this. You're saying, this is a space that matters and I want it to grow. And when enough people say that, something incredible happens. We create momentum. We build something sustainable, something meaningful. We keep this resource open to the student who's studying late at night, to the traveler who's trying to understand a new culture, to the parent who's learning alongside their child. So if you've been listening for a while and you haven't subscribed yet, let this be the moment. Take 3 seconds, literally just 3, and hit that subscribe button. If you're new here and this is your first episode, welcome. You're already part of the family, and subscribing is how you stay connected with us. It's how you make sure you don't miss any of the future episodes that are full of tips, stories, and real-life practice. And if you want to go one step further, leave a review or a rating. Tell us what you've learned. Tell us where you're listening from. Believe me, we read every single message. Every story matters. And when we share those stories with others, we inspire more people to keep going. Let me share something quick from a listener in Cairo. He told me he started listening while commuting to work, and for weeks, he never left a like or comment because he thought it didn't matter. But one day, he decided to write in. He said, I used to feel invisible, like my English didn't matter. But when you shared a message from another listener who sounded just like me, something changed. I realized I'm not doing this alone. That's what this podcast is about. That's what you are supporting when you take a moment to engage. So again, if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Like the episode if your platform allows it. Share it with someone who could use a little boost in their English learning. Let's continue building this space together, not as strangers, but as a real global community that believes learning should be fun, practical, and for everyone. Every voice matters here, including yours. When people ask me how to improve their English naturally, I always ask one question. How much English are you hearing every day? Not studying, not reading, hearing, because language is sound before it's structure. And this is where movies, series, and podcasts become some of the most powerful tools you could ever use. They are not just entertainment, they are living, breathing examples of how real people speak, think, and connect through English. Let's start with movies. When you watch a movie in English, you're not just hearing lines of dialogue. You're listening to the rhythm of the language, the tone, the emotions behind the words. You're exposed to real pronunciation, Not textbook pronunciation, not the slow robotic kind used in language apps, but the way people actually speak. In a romantic drama set in New York, you hear the fast-paced, casual style of American speech. In a historical film set in London, you hear a more formal tone, with different vocabulary and a completely different accent. Every movie you watch is like traveling to a different corner of the English-speaking world without needing a passport. Now let's talk about series. One of the biggest advantages of watching a series instead of just a single movie is that you get long-term exposure to the same characters. This is huge for language learners. You hear the same voices episode after episode, which helps your brain get used to the way certain people speak. You start to notice how their vocabulary evolves. You catch patterns, repeated expressions, and reactions in different situations. This repeated exposure builds familiarity and confidence. Think of someone watching a popular series set in Chicago. Over time, they'll start to pick up regional slang, learn the tone used when joking, and even anticipate certain phrases before they're spoken. But the power of series goes even deeper than repetition. They build emotional connection. When you're invested in the characters, you want to understand what they're saying. You're not forcing yourself to learn, you're curious. Your brain is alert because it wants to follow the story. And when you're emotionally engaged, your retention skyrockets. You remember phrases not because you studied them, but because they were used in a moment that moved you. Maybe a powerful conversation, a funny joke, or an intense argument. That connection is what turns passive listening into real language learning. Then there are podcasts. And I'll be honest, podcasts are one of my favorite tools. They are different from movies and series because they strip away the visual element. This forces your brain to focus only on the sound, the intonation, the meaning of the words. It's just your ears and the language. That kind of focus builds strong listening muscles. Whether you're listening to a scripted storytelling podcast, an interview with a guest, or an English learning show like this one, your brain is constantly working to understand not just individual words, but the message. What makes podcasts even more powerful is how flexible they are. You can listen to them while you're doing other things, on your way to work, cooking dinner, exercising, or walking your dog. That means you can surround yourself with English even if you don't have time to sit and study. Let's imagine a woman from Milan who's trying to improve her English while juggling a full-time job. She starts listening to a podcast on her morning commute. 10 minutes a day becomes an hour a week. In a few months, her listening improves, her vocabulary grows, and she starts thinking in English without even realizing it. Another huge advantage of movies, series, and podcasts is exposure to real vocabulary. This is something textbooks can't always give you. Textbooks often teach formal, polished English, the kind that might be used in a written test but not necessarily in a real conversation. When you watch a sitcom, you hear how people really greet each other. When you listen to a podcast interview, you hear how speakers use fillers like you know, like, and actually. You start to notice how questions are asked in casual conversations, how people interrupt politely, how they express doubt, agreement, frustration, or excitement. This is the language of life. You also get used to different accents. English is not one accent. A person from Dublin sounds different from someone in Los Angeles. A speaker from Sydney has a rhythm and tone that is different from someone in Toronto. If you only learn English from a single teacher or course, you might get used to just one voice, one speed, one way of speaking. But in the real world, English comes in many flavors. Movies, series, and podcasts give you access to this variety. And the more you expose yourself to it, the less surprised you'll be when you hear someone speak English in a different way than you're used to. Now let's talk about the emotional side. One of the biggest challenges in learning a language is motivation. When it feels like a chore, when it's boring or disconnected from your life, it's easy to give up. But when learning is fun, when it makes you laugh, when it surprises you, or touches your heart, it becomes part of your daily routine. That's what media can do. Watching a show that makes you laugh or cry makes the language feel human, not academic. It brings life into the learning process. Imagine a teenager in Jakarta who loves superhero movies. They start watching them in English, maybe with subtitles at first. Over time, they understand more. They start to recognize phrases, understand jokes, and feel proud of the progress. That feeling creates momentum. Now they want to learn more. They search interviews with the actors. They find a podcast about the movie. Without realizing it, they've created an English immersion environment, and it doesn't feel like work. This is why these resources are so effective. They bring you into the language naturally. They connect you to the culture, the humor, the emotion, and the rhythm of English. They're not just lessons, they're experiences. And when you use them consistently, they help you build the confidence to understand and eventually to speak. Let me tell you the story of Maria. She's from Barcelona, born and raised in the heart of the city, where life moves with rhythm, color, and the sound of Catalan and Spanish all around. But Maria had a dream that went beyond her city. She wanted to study marketing on an international level and work for a global company where English was the main language. There was just one problem. Even after years of studying English at school, she still couldn't follow a conversation or speak with confidence. Maria had always been a good student. She passed her English exams with decent grades, memorized grammar, rules, and filled notebooks with vocabulary lists. But when she tried to watch an English interview or understand lyrics in a song, everything blurred together. The words came too fast, the accent sounded strange, and she couldn't tell where one sentence ended and the next began. It was frustrating, especially because she knew that understanding English, not just reading it, was key to reaching her goals. Then one evening, something changed. She was scrolling through her favorite streaming platform when she saw a movie she'd already watched before. One of her favorites, actually, a romantic comedy from the US. Out of curiosity, she switched the audio to English and added English subtitles. She had never done that before. Usually, she would use Spanish subtitles or watch dubbed versions. But this time, something told her to try it differently. At first, it was hard. Really hard. The characters spoke quickly, and even though the subtitles helped, she missed a lot. But she noticed something interesting. Because she already knew the plot, she wasn't confused about the story. That made it easier to focus on the language. She watched for about 20 minutes, paused the movie, and thought, maybe I can do this in small pieces. So the next day, she watched the same 20 minutes again, but this time, more slowly, pausing after key lines, reading and listening at the same time. Maria started to write down phrases that she liked. Simple things, natural expressions, the way a character said, "Are you serious?" with surprise in their voice, or how another character used, "I'm not sure about that," when disagreeing politely. She played those scenes again and again, sometimes even repeating the line out loud. She wasn't trying to be perfect. She just wanted to hear it, feel it, say it. And somehow, it felt like a game, not homework. After a week, she started noticing improvements. She could watch 5 to 10 minutes without feeling lost. She didn't need to pause every time. And most importantly, she started to understand. Not every word, not every detail, but the message, the tone, the intention. She could hear the emotions behind the words, the sarcasm, the affection, the confusion. It was like she was developing a new kind of listening, not just hearing, but truly understanding how English was used in real life. Maria made a routine out of it. She chose movies that she liked, especially ones with dialogue and realistic situations. She avoided action films or fast-paced thrillers at first, because those were harder to follow. Instead, she picked dramas, comedies, and romantic stories. She always used English subtitles and made a habit of repeating short phrases that caught her attention. She even started keeping a notebook with her favorite expressions. Sometimes she would say them in front of the mirror just for fun. Then one day, something surprising happened. She was at a cafe with a group of international students visiting Barcelona. One of them, from Amsterdam, asked her something in English. Maria didn't hesitate. She answered in English, naturally, using a phrase she had heard in one of her favorite movies. It wasn't perfect, but it was clear, confident, and correct. The student smiled and continued the conversation. For the first time, Maria felt like English wasn't a subject she had to study. It was a tool she could use. That moment gave her a burst of motivation. She started talking more with tourists, asking questions in English when she could. Her listening skills grew faster than ever. She began to notice how often phrases from her movies appeared in real conversations. She even watched interviews with actors from the films she liked, paying attention to how they spoke in real life compared to their characters. It was all connected, and it all started with a simple habit: watching a familiar movie in English. With English subtitles, Maria didn't become fluent overnight, but she didn't need to. Her goal was to understand and to connect. And little by little, that's exactly what she achieved. Within a few months, she could watch an entire movie in English without subtitles and follow 80 to 90% of it. She even started challenging herself with British films and Australian series to test her ear with different accents. It wasn't always easy, but she saw every new phrase and every new accent as a puzzle to solve. She later shared this method with her younger cousin, who was struggling with English at school. She told her, "Pick a movie you love, watch it in English, use subtitles in English, and don't worry if you don't get everything, just listen, enjoy it, repeat your favorite lines, make it fun." Her cousin tried it, and within weeks, she was asking Maria what different phrases meant and practicing them during family dinners. Maria's journey shows us something powerful. Learning doesn't have to feel like studying. When you create a connection between what you love and what you want to learn, everything changes. You start to feel the language instead of just translating it. You begin to notice how real people speak, how conversations flow, and how to express yourself naturally. For Maria, it all began with curiosity, a little patience, and a willingness to try something different. And in doing so, she turned movie night into one of the best parts of her English journey. One of the most practical and effective tips I can share with you today is about how to use subtitles wisely when watching movies, series, or even short video clips in English. Subtitles are a powerful tool, but only when we use them in the right way. Many learners watch everything with subtitles in their native language. At first, that feels safe and comfortable. You understand everything that's going on, and it feels like you're following along. But the truth is, your brain isn't really learning English. It's learning how to read your own language while watching something in English. The audio becomes background noise, and you're not truly listening or thinking in English. That's why one of the best things you can do is switch your subtitles to English. It might feel a bit scary at first, but trust me, this small change makes a huge difference in how your brain processes the language. When you read and hear the same words at the same time, something powerful happens. Your brain starts to connect the sound of the word with its meaning and its spelling. You begin to notice how words are pronounced, how they're used in real conversations, and how they appear in context. This builds what I like to call language instincts, the kind of natural understanding that native speakers develop by being surrounded by the language all the time. Let me break it down for you. When you watch a scene in English with English subtitles, you're giving your brain 3 layers of input. You hear the word, you read the word, and you see how it's used in a real situation. For example, if a character says, "I'm just messing with you," and you see that same phrase written at the bottom of the screen, your brain connects the pronunciation, the spelling, and the meaning all at once. And because it's part of a story or situation, You also understand the tone, whether it's serious, funny, sarcastic, or casual. You're not just learning vocabulary, you're learning how to use language naturally. Now here's how to use this strategy in a way that really helps you grow. If you're a beginner or still getting used to the sounds of English, start with English subtitles on. Choose content you enjoy, something that holds your attention, maybe a comedy or drama where the dialogue is clear and not too fast. Watch 10 or 15 minutes at a time, pause when you need to, and if a phrase confuses you, take a moment to read it again or even write it down. Don't try to translate every single word. Focus on understanding the overall meaning of what's being said and how it's being said. Then, after a few sessions like that, challenge yourself. Watch the same scene again, but this time without subtitles. You'll be surprised by how much you can catch. The first time, you may only understand a few key words, but your brain has already seen the language once. It has already built those small connections. So each time you go back, your understanding improves. This is where the real growth happens. You stop depending on the written word and start depending on your ears, your memory, and your growing instinct for English. It's important to be patient with yourself. This is not a race. You don't have to understand everything immediately. In fact, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. And every time you switch from using subtitles to watching without them, you're building a habit of listening actively. That's what makes a difference in real conversations. In real life, people don't come with subtitles. You have to rely on what you hear and how quickly you can interpret it. So the more you practice without subtitles, the more confident you'll feel in everyday situations. Let me give you a simple routine you can try. Choose one episode of a series you like, around 20 to 30 minutes long. Watch the first half with English subtitles. Take note of 3 or 4 phrases you find useful. Don't stop every few seconds. Just let the story flow and note anything that stands out. Then, rewatch that same part without subtitles. Try to focus only on listening. You'll start noticing small things, the way people say kind of or you know, how their intonation changes, how they use pauses. These details matter more than you think. They shape the way English sounds and feels, and you won't get that from textbooks. Another powerful exercise is shadowing. That means repeating what you hear, right after the character says it. You can do this with subtitles on or off, depending on your level. Try pausing the video after a sentence and saying it out loud yourself. Match the tone, the rhythm, the pronunciation. Even if you make mistakes, you're building fluency. You're not just learning to listen. You're learning to speak with more confidence and natural rhythm. If you're ready to go one step further, try watching a scene without any subtitles first. Just watch and listen. See what you can understand. Then, watch it again with English subtitles. You'll notice details you missed before. This kind of practice helps your brain become more flexible, switching between listening, understanding, and connecting meaning without relying on translation. Over time, it gets easier. And the best part is that you start to enjoy the process. You're no longer just studying English, you're living it. I've met learners from Seoul, from Paris, from Rio de Janeiro, from Nairobi, who all shared this same journey. They started out using subtitles in their native language, then switched to English subtitles, and eventually watched everything without any subtitles at all. It didn't happen in a week or even in a month. But because they made this shift, they trained their ears, expanded their vocabulary, and gained the confidence to use English in the real world. They didn't do it by memorizing long word lists or studying grammar rules every night. They did it by watching, listening, repeating, and enjoying the content they loved in English. So if you've been using subtitles in your own language, this is your sign to take the next step. Try using English subtitles instead. And if you've already done that, try watching something without subtitles for just a few minutes. Make it a habit. Be curious. Be kind to yourself when you don't catch every word. That's part of the process. Each time you practice this way, you're building something much bigger than vocabulary. You're building real, natural fluency. Let me tell you a story about someone who might remind you of yourself. His name is Daniel, and he lives in Tokyo. Daniel is a 34-year-old engineer working for a tech company in Shibuya. His days are packed. He's up by 6 in the morning, and after a quick breakfast and a short walk to the train station, he spends nearly an hour commuting to the office. Then it's meetings, emails, project updates, lunch at his desk, and more meetings. By the time he gets home in the evening, he's too tired to open a grammar book or follow an online English lesson. And yet, despite this busy schedule, Daniel found a way to improve his English every single day, without changing his routine. It started with curiosity. One morning, feeling a bit bored with music and tired of the same news cycle, Daniel searched for something different to listen to on his way to work. He found a podcast in English about technology, something related to his field, but casual in tone. He decided to give it a try. At first, he didn't understand everything. The hosts spoke quickly, they used idioms and expressions he wasn't familiar with, and sometimes they made jokes he didn't catch. But Daniel kept listening, not just once, but every day. The next morning, and the next, and then again the following week. Soon, Daniel noticed something interesting. Words that sounded confusing at first began to sound familiar. He started to recognize phrases like cutting edge, back to the drawing board, and keep me in the loop. He couldn't always explain the grammar behind them, but he could understand their meaning from context. And more than that, he was starting to predict what the speakers might say next. The rhythm of their speech, their tone, and their choice of words started to feel natural to him, like music you listen to so often that you begin to memorize the lyrics without trying. What made the difference for Daniel wasn't the number of hours he studied. It was the habit he created. Every morning and evening, 5 days a week, he had 2 windows of time where he could just listen. Not with a pen and notebook in hand, not pausing and rewinding to look up every word, but simply listening. Actively, but casually. He was using a method that many learners overlook: immersion through routine. And because he chose podcasts that matched his interests, it didn't feel like a lesson. It felt like a conversation he was part of, even if he wasn't speaking. After a few weeks, Daniel started adding variety. He still listened to tech podcasts, but he also tried some on personal development, storytelling, and even comedy. He wanted to challenge his ear with different accents and tones. One of his favorite podcasts had hosts from London and New York. At first, the contrast in their pronunciation threw him off. The British host said things like schedule and advertisement differently than the American. But again, by listening consistently, Daniel became more flexible. He was training his brain to recognize variations in pronunciation, and that's something textbooks rarely prepare you for. One morning, while waiting at a cafe near the office, Daniel found himself mentally repeating something he had heard in the podcast that day. It was a casual expression, "It's not rocket science," used when someone was talking about simplifying a complicated task. Daniel smiled to himself because he not only understood it, but felt confident enough to imagine using it himself. He even repeated it under his breath, mimicking the way the host had said it. That moment, small as it was, gave him a sense of progress. He didn't need to memorize that phrase. He had absorbed it naturally. Over time, this listening practice had an unexpected benefit. Daniel noticed that his pronunciation was improving. He hadn't taken any speaking classes, but because he was constantly exposed to natural conversational English, he was picking up the sounds, rhythm, and intonation of fluent speakers. When he did speak in meetings with international clients or colleagues, he found himself more fluid and accurate. He was thinking in English more often and translating less in his head. It wasn't perfect, but it felt smoother. His confidence grew, not because someone told him he was improving, but because he could feel it in real-time conversations. Another shift happened when Daniel realized he was beginning to catch jokes and cultural references in English that used to go over his head. In one episode of a business podcast, a guest made a joke using the phrase, "Let's not reinvent the wheel," and Daniel laughed along. A few months earlier, that would have been just another phrase he didn't quite get. Now, not only did he understand it, but he was enjoying the language in a deeper way. This daily exposure, even if just for 20 or 30 minutes, added up. Listening became part of his lifestyle. Just like drinking coffee or checking his email, it became something automatic, something he didn't have to plan. And because it fit so easily into his existing routine, it didn't add pressure to his already busy life. He didn't have to sacrifice sleep or work or time with friends. He just used the time he already had, on the train, walking through the station, waiting in line. What Daniel's story shows us is that fluency isn't about studying harder. It's about being consistent and making English part of your everyday world. Podcasts are perfect for this. They're portable, personal, and varied. You can listen while doing almost anything: cooking, exercising, cleaning, commuting, and when you choose topics that genuinely interest you, the experience becomes enjoyable instead of stressful. You don't have to understand every word. You don't need to take notes every time. The act of listening, truly listening, is enough to start changing the way your brain processes the language. Daniel never imagined that something as simple as listening to podcasts would become one of the most effective tools in his English journey. He didn't need an expensive course or long hours in front of a screen. What he needed was consistency, curiosity, and content that matched his world. And now, months later, Daniel not only understands more, he communicates with more ease, more natural rhythm, and more confidence than ever before. When you're learning English using movies, series, or podcasts, one of the biggest decisions you'll make is what to watch or listen to. And it might sound simple at first. Just press play on a popular show or top podcast, right? But the truth is, not all content is helpful for language learners. In fact, the wrong choice can leave you feeling confused, frustrated, or even discouraged. That's why today I want to talk about how to choose the right content, the kind that matches your level, keeps you interested, and helps you learn faster without feeling overwhelmed. Let's begin with one key idea. Not all English media is created with learners in mind. Many TV shows and podcasts are made for native speakers. That means they might include very fast speech, heavy use of slang or cultural references, and jokes that are hard to understand if you're not already fluent. This doesn't mean you should avoid all native content. Not at all. But it does mean you should be selective. Look for materials where the language is clear, the pace is manageable, and the topics are interesting to you personally. When you make that connection, your brain becomes more active, more engaged, and you remember more without even realizing it. Think about it this way. If you choose a podcast that talks about business strategies, but you have zero interest in business, your attention will drop quickly. You might listen for 5 minutes and then stop. Not because your English isn't good enough, but because the content didn't speak to you. On the other hand, if you love food and find a podcast where the host describes recipes, interviews chefs, and talks about food culture, you're going to be naturally more invested. You'll hear words you want to understand. You'll be curious. And that curiosity is a powerful learning tool. It keeps you listening. It keeps you focused. And it helps you learn vocabulary in context. Let's take another example, TV series. Maybe you've heard someone say, just watch a lot of Netflix and your English will improve. And yes, there's truth in that, but only if you're watching the right kind of series for your level. Some shows are fast, full of sarcasm or regional slang, and jump quickly from one scene to another with no time to process what's happening. If you're just starting out or even at an intermediate level, these shows can feel more like a puzzle than a learning tool. That's why choosing a show with slower, more natural dialogue can make a huge difference. Many learners benefit from shows that are based on everyday life. For example, Shows that focus on family, work, or daily routines often include useful vocabulary and phrases you can use in real life. And if the actors speak clearly, you're able to pick up pronunciation, intonation, and even the little pauses that make English sound more natural. Avoid content where the characters mumble or where the background music is too loud. You want to hear every word, not struggle to separate dialogue from noise. Now let's talk about matching content to your goals. If your main goal is to improve your speaking, focus on content that includes a lot of conversational English. Podcasts with interviews or casual chats between hosts are great for this. You'll hear how people ask questions, express opinions, interrupt politely, agree or disagree, and transition between topics. These are the skills that often don't appear in grammar books, but they're essential for real communication. If you're trying to expand your vocabulary, choose content with a specific theme. Let's say you're interested in travel. A travel podcast will introduce you to useful terms related to airports, hotels, restaurants, and directions. Because you're hearing these words in context, you're more likely to remember them and use them correctly. The same applies to medical dramas, legal shows, or podcasts about technology. But remember, choose a topic that you find interesting. Don't force yourself to watch a show just because someone else said it's good for learning. If it bores you, it won't help you. Another tip: think about your current English level and find content that's just a bit above it. If it's too easy, you won't learn anything new. If it's too difficult, you'll get frustrated and might stop watching or listening altogether. The sweet spot is where you understand most of what's being said, but still notice a few new words or expressions in each episode. This small challenge keeps your brain working and helps you grow step by step. You can also take advantage of podcasts or video series that are made for English learners. There are many great ones out there where the speakers talk at a slower pace and explain common expressions as they go. These can be especially helpful if you're still building confidence or if you're returning to English after a long break. Don't think of them as too easy. Think of them as a strong foundation. Once you feel ready, you can move on to native content and enjoy it much more because you'll have the tools to follow along. And here's another factor to consider: accents. English is spoken all over the world, and depending on where you plan to use your English, it might help to get used to different varieties. If you plan to travel or work in the UK, for example, choose some British content. If your colleagues are from Canada or Australia, listen to shows with those accents. Over time, your ear will adjust. It's like training your brain to recognize different voices in a crowded room. And the more comfortable you are with different accents, the more confident you'll feel in conversation. Let me add one more thing that's often overlooked: length. Short content can be just as effective as long content. A 5-minute video with clear speech and interesting dialogue might teach you more than an hour-long movie where you get lost after the first 10 minutes. Especially when you're just starting out, shorter content can help you stay focused and avoid burnout. You can watch or listen several times, repeat lines, and even shadow the speaker without getting overwhelmed. In summary, when choosing movies, series, or podcasts to learn English, don't just follow the crowd. Choose what works for you. Think about your interests, your level, your learning goals, and your listening habits. Make English enjoyable. Make it personal. Because when you actually like what you're hearing, you're far more likely to stick with it. And that's where real progress begins. Let me tell you the story of Aisha, a 24-year-old university student from Cairo, Egypt. Aisha had studied English for years. She was good at grammar, could write decent essays, and scored well on standardized tests. But there was one thing that kept bothering her. Every time she scrolled through social media or watched an influencer's video, she realized there was a gap in her understanding. People were using expressions that didn't make any sense to her. They weren't the phrases she had learned in class. They were informal, full of slang, and delivered in a tone she couldn't quite interpret. She found herself wondering, what does that even mean? More often than she liked. At first, she thought the problem was her vocabulary list. Maybe she needed to memorize more words. But no matter how many definitions she studied, those casual phrases kept slipping through her fingers. She would hear someone say, "I'm so done with this." And she'd think, done with what? Dinner? Homework? Or someone would post, "That movie was fire," and she'd be completely lost. There were so many expressions: spill the tea, low-key tired, no cap, I can't even. That didn't follow any grammar rule she had learned. Then, one afternoon, while talking to a friend who had spent some time in New York, Aisha got an idea. Her friend said, "You know, I learned most of that stuff by watching teen dramas and sitcoms. Seriously, shows like that are full of slang." That conversation stayed with Aisha. The next weekend, she decided to try it for herself. She chose a popular American teen series, one that had come up many times in her social media feed. It was the kind of show with high school students, fast-paced dialogue, and lots of casual talk between friends. At first, it was overwhelming. The characters spoke fast, they used inside jokes, and there were moments Aisha had to pause every few seconds to catch up. But instead of giving up, she decided to take a different approach. She started watching with English subtitles. Every time she came across a phrase she didn't understand, she wrote it down. But instead of running to a dictionary, she would wait. She'd keep watching and try to figure out the meaning from the situation, the characters' reactions, and the tone of voice. If someone said, "He totally ghosted me," and the girl looked frustrated and ignored, Aisha could guess what it meant. She began to treat the series like a language lab, not just entertainment, but a real opportunity to understand how people really talk. After a few weeks, she noticed a big change. Not only was she understanding more slang, but she was also starting to hear the rhythm and music of spoken English. She noticed how people use their voices to show emotion. When someone said, "Seriously?" with rising intonation, it meant disbelief or surprise. When someone said, "Whatever," with a sigh, it meant frustration or dismissal. These things didn't show up in textbooks, but they mattered. They helped her understand the feeling behind the words. Soon, Aisha began watching comedies too. Sitcoms became her favorite. Shows with friends talking in cafes, roommates arguing over rent, people making fun of each other in a loving way. It all felt more real and closer to daily life. These series were packed with idioms, cultural references, and playful language. Aisha kept learning. She started to understand jokes that used double meanings. She could finally tell when a character was being sarcastic or sincere. And she loved how these shows used language in such a creative way. It was different from academic English. It was alive, dynamic, and fun. What surprised her the most was how often these same expressions showed up in comments, tweets, and even in podcasts she listened to later. Because she had seen them in the context of a show, she didn't have to stop and translate. She already knew what they meant. It was like unlocking a secret code. Suddenly, online conversations made more sense. She even started using some of the expressions herself, carefully at first just to see if she could sound natural. When her American language partner told her, "You sound just like someone from LA," she felt proud, and also amazed at how much she had absorbed just by watching shows she enjoyed. The key to Aisha's success wasn't just the content she chose. It was how she used it. She didn't passively watch. She paid attention to how people used words, how they moved their mouths, how they changed their tone. She started repeating short phrases out loud, mimicking what she heard. She paused scenes and said the lines herself, trying to match the pronunciation and rhythm. It became a game. How close could she get to sounding like the characters? And the more she practiced, the more confident she became. Her English classes suddenly felt easier too. During discussions, she could explain herself better. When classmates used textbook phrases, Aisha often had a more natural way to say the same thing. Her teacher noticed. So did her friends. It wasn't that she had memorized a list of slang words. It was that she had absorbed a style of speaking, something that came from context, repetition, and emotional engagement. One of the most powerful moments came when she was watching an episode and realized she had gone 15 full minutes without needing subtitles. She laughed at a joke and then caught herself. She didn't need to translate it. She had understood it instantly. That moment, for Aisha, felt like a breakthrough. She wasn't just watching a show in English. She was living it, understanding it in real time, like a native speaker would. This kind of learning is deeply personal. Aisha's story shows that sometimes the most effective methods are the ones that feel the least like study. She didn't sit down with a grammar book. She turned on a series, followed her curiosity, and gave herself permission to explore language in a way that felt natural and enjoyable. That choice opened the door to fluency in a way no classroom ever had. It's important to remember that language isn't just about words. It's about culture, tone, rhythm, and emotion. Aisha didn't just learn slang, she learned how to feel the language, how to catch the mood of a scene, how to laugh at a joke or recognize sarcasm, and that made all the difference in how she now communicates in English, both online and in conversation. One of the most powerful techniques I want to share with you today is something called shadowing. It's a simple but highly effective method to improve your speaking and listening skills simultaneously. Imagine this. You're watching a movie, a TV series, or listening to a podcast in English. Instead of just watching or listening passively, you actively repeat what you hear. You mimic the actor's voice, tone, and rhythm, trying to sound just like them. This technique is known as shadowing, and it can significantly improve your fluency in English. Now, you might be thinking, why should I repeat the same sentence someone else is saying? Well, let me tell you, this technique is not just about repeating words. It's about developing a deeper connection with the language. When you shadow, you're not only practicing pronunciation, but also learning the subtle aspects of speaking, intonation, stress, rhythm, and even the emotions behind the words. So, how does shadowing work? Let's break it down. First, you choose something to listen to. It could be a podcast, a series, or a movie in English. The key is to pick something that is interesting to you and that has clear and natural pronunciation. The best part is, it doesn't matter if the content is scripted or spontaneous. It's all valuable practice. Once you're listening, the goal is to imitate what you hear as closely as possible. This means you don't just passively listen to the words. You try to repeat them immediately after you hear them. It's almost like you're echoing the voice you're hearing, hence the term shadowing. You're not just copying the words, but also mimicking the rhythm and the intonation of the speaker. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're watching a scene from an American TV show where two characters are having a conversation in a cafe. One character says, "I can't believe we're finally here," with a certain enthusiasm in their voice. You should try to repeat that sentence, imitating not only the words but also the energy in their voice. Pay attention to the way their tone rises at "finally" and how they pause before saying "here." Repeat it. Do it out loud. Imitate them as closely as possible. You can start slow. Don't worry if you can't keep up with the speaker in the beginning. The idea is to practice saying the words clearly and correctly. As you get more comfortable, increase the speed and try to match the pace of the original speaker. The more you practice, the more natural your speech will sound. Now, let's talk about why shadowing is so effective for language learners. When you shadow, you're doing more than just improving your pronunciation. You're training your ear to hear the language more clearly. This helps with your listening comprehension because you're becoming familiar with the sounds, intonation, and rhythm of native speakers. Over time, This practice will make it easier for you to understand spoken English in real-world conversations, even when the speakers are talking fast or using slang. Another reason shadowing works so well is that it helps to improve your speaking fluency. When you shadow a speaker, you are actively engaging your mouth, tongue, and vocal cords to produce the correct sounds. This muscle memory helps you speak more naturally. You won't need to think as much about how to say something. Instead, it will come out more smoothly, almost like second nature. The beauty of shadowing is that it's like practicing with a real person every time. You are essentially learning from a native speaker, understanding how they stress certain words, how they pause in conversation, and how they express emotion. All of these things contribute to making your speech sound more natural, and it helps you understand English on a deeper level. But it's important to note that shadowing isn't just about repeating words. You should also focus on the meaning behind those words. When you repeat a sentence, ask yourself why the speaker chose to say it that way. Why did they emphasize a particular word? How does the tone of their voice change the meaning of the sentence? This is a key aspect of language learning that textbooks don't always teach you. Shadowing helps you understand how language works in a real-world context. And don't worry if you make mistakes along the way. That's part of the learning process. Even if you don't get every word or sound perfect, just the act of practicing regularly will make a huge difference in your overall fluency. The more you shadow, the more confident you will feel when speaking English in real life. It's like building a foundation. With each practice, you're adding a new layer of understanding. One great tip is to start with short clips, like a 10-15-second dialogue, especially if you're new to shadowing. You can repeat that clip multiple times until you're comfortable with the words, sounds, and rhythm. Then, gradually move on to longer segments. It's important to go at your own pace, so don't rush the process. The goal is to focus on quality over quantity. If you're looking for more ways to enhance your shadowing practice, try watching scenes with subtitles first. This way, you can see the words while hearing them, which helps you make connections between how words are spelled and how they're pronounced. Once you feel confident with the subtitles, challenge yourself to turn them off and rely solely on your listening skills. Another thing you can do is record yourself while shadowing. This will allow you to hear how close your pronunciation is to the original speaker and give you a chance to identify areas for improvement. Listening to yourself might feel a bit strange at first, but it's an excellent way to track your progress and make adjustments where necessary. The beauty of shadowing is that it doesn't require any special tools or materials. All you need is access to content that you enjoy. Whether it's a movie, a podcast, or even a YouTube video, you can start practicing shadowing right away. Just find something that excites you and make it a part of your regular routine. You can also combine shadowing with other methods. For example, you can shadow while reading along with the text. Or you can try shadowing when you hear new vocabulary or phrases. Over time, you'll notice that your pronunciation improves, your vocabulary expands, and your speaking ability becomes more fluid. Remember, the key to success with shadowing is consistency. The more you practice, the more you'll feel comfortable and confident in speaking English. Shadowing isn't just a technique. It's a fun and interactive way to become more connected with the language, and it brings the language to life in a way that other methods can't. So, don't be afraid to speak out loud, mimic those dialogues, and let yourself enjoy the process of learning. All right, here's a fun and simple challenge I'd love for you to try. It's something that will help you improve your English every day in a manageable and enjoyable way. I'm calling it the 1 scene a day challenge. Sounds easy, right? But trust me, when you commit to this, you'll start noticing huge improvements in your language skills in just a week. Here's how it works. Choose a short scene from a movie or TV show that you like, something that's around 1 to 3 minutes long. It could be a conversation between 2 characters, a funny moment, or even a dramatic scene. The key is to pick something that interests you, something you'd actually enjoy watching over and over again. Once you've selected your scene, make it a goal to watch it every day for the next week. Now I know what you're thinking. Why watch the same scene over and over again? Well, let me tell you why this works. Watching a scene repeatedly allows you to focus on the small details that you might have missed the first few times. You'll catch nuances in the pronunciation, you'll start to pick up on slang and expressions that native speakers use, and you'll become more familiar with the rhythm and flow of everyday conversations in English. The first time you watch the scene, just enjoy it. Pay attention to the context, the emotions, and how the characters speak. Listen to the intonation, the pauses, the way they emphasize certain words. What's important here is to get the general feel of the scene. Don't stress too much about understanding every single word. Just let yourself get absorbed by the flow of the conversation. Once you've seen it once, go ahead and watch it again. But this time, focus on repeating the phrases. Try to shadow the speakers as they talk. I've mentioned this technique before, and it's super useful here. Repeat the sentences out loud, matching the rhythm, tone, and pronunciation of the characters. Even if you don't get it perfect right away, the more you repeat, the more natural your speech will sound. You'll begin to internalize the way English flows in real conversations. As you continue watching the scene over the next few days, try to challenge yourself. The next time you watch it, try to watch without subtitles. See how much you can understand without relying on them. This will push your listening skills and help your brain make the connection between the spoken language and the meaning behind the words. You'll also notice that some words and phrases start to feel more familiar. If there's something you don't understand, pause the scene, look up the word or phrase, and then try watching it again. Here's a little trick. Try recording yourself as you repeat the lines. This way, you can listen to your own pronunciation and compare it with the original speakers. It will be a real eye-opener to hear your progress. You might even be surprised at how much better your pronunciation becomes after just a few days of doing this. The beauty of this challenge is that you don't need to spend hours each day. Just 5 to 10 minutes a day is enough. With consistency, you'll start seeing results in no time. And the best part is, this method works for all levels. Whether you're a beginner or an intermediate speaker, you can adapt the challenge to your needs. Beginners can start with simpler scenes or even with animated shows, while intermediate learners can go for more complex dialogues or even movies in different genres. The key is to enjoy it while you're doing it. And don't forget, this isn't just about repeating the words. It's also about understanding the culture behind the language. Every scene is a window into how native speakers communicate, and you'll get a sense of how different emotions, situations, and contexts shape the way people speak. By watching these scenes repeatedly, you'll start recognizing patterns in how English is used naturally in everyday life. And that's exactly the kind of exposure you need to improve your fluency. One more thing. I want to make this challenge even more fun and interactive. I encourage you to share your experience with us. Once you've started the one scene a day challenge, take a moment to share what scene you're watching, what you've learned, and how it's helping you improve your English. Post about it on social media, tag the podcast, and let's create a community of learners who can inspire each other. Use the hashtag #OneSceneADayChallenge, and let's see how you're progressing. You can even ask questions, share your thoughts, or get feedback from others who are also participating. It's all about building that sense of community and supporting one another as we work toward fluency. This challenge isn't just for you. It's for all of us. We're all in this together, and by sharing our experiences and learning from each other, we can create a stronger and more motivated community of English learners. The beauty of this challenge is that it fits into your daily routine. You don't have to rearrange your life to make room for language learning. Just add one scene to your day, and soon you'll notice how much easier it becomes to understand natural English and express yourself in a more fluid and confident way. So, are you ready to take on the one scene a day challenge? I'm sure you'll love it. Whether it's a comedy scene that makes you laugh, a dramatic moment that pulls you in, or a simple conversation that helps you understand the flow of everyday English, this challenge is a fun and effective way to improve your language skills. And remember, consistency is key. 5 minutes a day is all it takes to start seeing results. I can't wait to see how you do with this challenge. Let's make learning English even more enjoyable by using movies, TV shows, and podcasts as a part of our daily practice. Keep practicing, keep sharing, and together we'll keep improving. Happy learning. When it comes to learning English through movies, series, and podcasts, there are a few common mistakes that many learners make. These mistakes can slow down your progress or make the process feel more frustrating than it needs to be. So, in this part of the episode, I want to make sure you avoid these pitfalls and get the most out of your language learning journey. The first mistake I see all the time is watching content without giving it your full attention. You know the feeling. You put on a movie or a series in English, but your mind starts to wander after a few minutes. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone or you're doing something else while the show is on in the background. While this may seem like an easy way to expose yourself to the language, it doesn't actually help you improve. In fact, it can actually hurt your learning process because you're not actively listening or engaging with the material. Remember, language learning requires active involvement. If you're watching a movie or series to learn English, you need to be present. Focus on the words being spoken, pay attention to the pronunciation, and try to notice how the actors express emotions or react in different situations. This active engagement will allow your brain to make the necessary connections to better understand the language. It's like when you're practicing a sport. Just showing up isn't enough. You need to give it your best effort to improve. So, instead of using English content as background noise, try to treat it like an opportunity for focused practice. Turn off your phone, eliminate distractions, and truly engage with the show or podcast. When you do this, you'll notice that you're learning faster, and you'll start picking up things you never noticed before. Make it a point to understand the context of what's happening, why people are saying what they're saying, and how the words are connected to the actions or emotions in the scene. The more focused you are, the more you'll learn. The second mistake is choosing content that's too complex for your current level of English. I completely understand the desire to jump into something that seems exciting or advanced, but this can actually be counterproductive. For example, if you're a beginner or intermediate learner and you choose to watch a very fast-paced, slang-heavy show with difficult vocabulary, you may find yourself feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. Instead of feeling motivated to learn, you may end up confused or demotivated. It's important to pick content that matches your level. For beginners, this means selecting shows or movies that use simple language, clear pronunciation, and easy-to-follow plots. For example, animated children's shows or family-friendly sitcoms are a great place to start. They often feature simple conversations, slower speech, and clear enunciation. As you become more comfortable with these shows, you can gradually move on to content with more complex language like dramas or talk shows. But always remember, start where you are, and don't rush into difficult content too soon. The key is to find a balance between challenge and understanding. It's also a good idea to think about the genre of the content you're watching. Some types of shows or movies may be harder to follow because of their language, but the way people speak in them can also be more important than how quickly or dramatically they speak. For instance, shows like Friends or How I Met Your Mother are often recommended for learners because the dialogue is natural and relatable. It's everyday language, but it's also spoken clearly and slowly enough for learners to catch. On the other hand, if you choose a historical drama with lots of complex vocabulary, you may get discouraged by all the unfamiliar words and expressions. Another mistake learners make is thinking that they need to understand everything. If you try to understand every single word, you'll end up focusing too much on the small details and not enough on the big picture. Remember, fluency is not about understanding every word. It's about being able to get the meaning, follow the conversation, and express yourself. It's completely normal to hear a word or expression you don't understand, and that's okay. In fact, it's a great opportunity for you to learn new vocabulary. So, instead of stressing over every unfamiliar word, focus on the overall message of the scene or podcast. Try to get the context and the main idea of what's being said. Once you've watched a scene or listened to a podcast episode a few times, you'll start to understand more and more, and those unknown words will start to make sense. The next common mistake is being afraid of making mistakes yourself. When you're learning a new language, it's easy to feel like you need to get everything perfect, but that's just not how language learning works. You will make mistakes. That's a natural part of the process. What matters is that you keep going, even when it feels difficult or awkward. Don't let the fear of making mistakes stop you from speaking or practicing. In fact, making mistakes is one of the fastest ways to improve your skills. Just think about how you learned your first language. When you were a baby, you didn't worry about making mistakes. You just tried to communicate, and your brain learned from those experiences. You didn't care if you said a word wrong or mispronounced something. So, why should it be any different? Now, give yourself permission to make mistakes and learn from them. Embrace the process and remember that every mistake is a step forward in your language journey. Lastly, it's important to be patient with yourself. Learning English takes time, and it's easy to get discouraged if you don't see immediate results. But remember, the more you practice, the more progress you'll make, even if it doesn't feel like it every day. Keep going, and keep showing up for your learning, even when it feels difficult. Progress isn't always linear, but with consistency, you will improve. So, to recap, the main mistakes to avoid are not paying active attention, choosing content that's too difficult, expecting to understand everything, fearing mistakes, and lacking patience. Avoiding these common pitfalls will help you learn more effectively, and it will make the process much more enjoyable. Keep practicing and remember, it's okay to make mistakes and take it one step at a time. Now I want to take a moment to encourage you to think about your own experience with learning English. How do you currently consume content in English? Do you find yourself watching movies, listening to podcasts, or perhaps binge-watching your favorite series? And if so, how much are you truly engaging with the language? Are you just passively watching and listening, or are you actively trying to learn and improve? I want you to reflect on this for a second. When you watch a movie or listen to a podcast in English, how do you feel? Do you feel confident, like you're understanding more each time? Or do you sometimes feel frustrated, like you're missing something or not making as much progress as you'd like? It's completely normal to have moments of doubt, but the key is recognizing where you are right now and thinking about how you can take your learning to the next level. Let me ask you a few questions to help you dive deeper into your own habits. When you watch a movie or series in English, do you pay attention to the way the characters speak? Are you trying to pick up new vocabulary, or are you mainly focused on the plot? I'm sure you've noticed that the characters' way of speaking isn't always perfect, right? They use slang, they speak fast, and sometimes they even make mistakes or don't finish their sentences. But this is real language. This is how native speakers talk, and this is what will help you improve your English in the long run. Think about this. When you hear a new word or phrase, what do you do? Do you make a mental note of it and look it up later? Or do you just move on, hoping you'll remember it later? One of the best ways to learn from what you watch or listen to is to stop and reflect on new words or expressions. You don't have to do this every single time. But when something catches your attention, take a moment to pause and think. What does this mean? How is it used? Can I use it in my own conversations? This active approach will help you retain the vocabulary better and allow you to use it in your own speaking and writing. But here's the important part. Reflection isn't just about what you're watching or listening to. It's also about how you approach the learning process itself. How do you think about your goals with English? Do you find yourself focusing on perfection, or do you embrace progress? So many learners get stuck in the mindset that they need to speak perfectly or understand everything right away. But that's not how language learning works. You don't need to understand every word or phrase to improve your skills. The goal is to be able to understand enough to follow along, to get the general idea, and to communicate your thoughts. The more you practice, the more natural the language will feel. So let's think about how you can adjust your approach. How can you make your English practice more active and intentional? Maybe you can start by focusing on one small piece of content, like a short video, a podcast episode, or even a single scene from a movie. Watch it carefully and try to understand as much as you can without relying on subtitles. Don't be afraid to pause, rewind, and replay parts that you find difficult. In fact, if you find yourself struggling with a particular word or phrase, challenge yourself to figure out the meaning from context. This helps you build your problem-solving skills in the language, and it trains your brain to make connections more quickly. Another strategy is to take a more intentional approach when selecting the content you consume. For example, ask yourself, is this content too advanced for me, or is it just the right challenge? Finding content that matches your current level can make all the difference in your learning. If something feels too difficult, it may cause frustration and make you give up, but if it's too easy, you won't learn as much. Try to strike a balance. You want to challenge yourself, but not overwhelm yourself. Now think about the variety of content you're consuming. Are you sticking to the same type of material? Maybe you always watch dramas, or perhaps you're always listening to podcasts on business topics. It's great to have favorites, but adding variety to your learning can give you new perspectives and expose you to different types of vocabulary. For instance, listening to podcasts on a range of topics, like health, culture, or even sports, can help you build a more well-rounded vocabulary. If you tend to watch movies or series from the same genre, try switching it up. Maybe watch a documentary or a stand-up comedy special. Each type of content will introduce you to different language patterns and help you learn in different ways. Think about the pace at which you're learning too. Do you rush through the content, trying to finish as quickly as possible, or do you take the time to really absorb what you're watching? Learning English, like any skill, takes time and patience. There's no rush. The more time you spend actively listening and engaging with the material, the more progress you'll make. Even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day, it's more effective to take your time and absorb the language than to rush through it just to say you've done it. Another thing to think about is how you're practicing outside of watching movies or listening to podcasts. Are you speaking the language as often as you can? Are you looking for opportunities to use what you're learning in real conversations? Even if you don't have a speaking partner available right now, there are plenty of ways to practice. You can repeat lines from movies or podcasts to improve your pronunciation, or even speak aloud as you describe what's happening in a scene. Practice makes perfect, and the more you practice, the more fluent you'll become. Reflecting on your own experience with content in English is an essential part of improving your language skills. It's all about being mindful of how you engage with the language, how you approach your learning, and how you're setting yourself up for success. Are you making the most of every opportunity to learn, or is there something you could do differently? Take a moment to think about your current habits and ask yourself how you can adjust your approach to make your learning more effective and enjoyable. This process of self-reflection will help you stay on track and continue to make progress toward fluency. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress no matter how small. Keep reflecting, keep adjusting, and keep learning, because every step forward counts. As we come to the end of this episode, let's take a moment to recap the key points we covered today. We've talked about how movies, series, and podcasts can transform your English, and I hope you're feeling inspired to dive deeper into your learning. Remember, it's all about consistency and making your language practice enjoyable by integrating it into your daily life. We started off with the powerful story of Maria from Barcelona, who found that by watching movies with English subtitles, she could pick up the language in a fun and natural way. By repeating short phrases and listening closely, Maria was able to rapidly improve her understanding of English. It was a simple yet effective technique, and it's something you can start doing today too. The key takeaway from her story is how engaging with content that interests you can make the learning process feel less like a chore and more like a rewarding experience. Then we heard from Daniel in Tokyo. As an engineer with a busy schedule, Daniel didn't have a lot of time for formal studying, but he found a solution. By listening to podcasts during his commute, he was able to improve his English without even trying. The beauty of podcasts is that you can listen to them anytime and anywhere. Daniel's story reminds us that we don't always need hours of study time to see progress. Even a few minutes of listening a day can lead to real improvement. Aisha's story from Cairo also brought an important lesson. Aisha was eager to understand the slang and casual expressions that are often used in real-life conversations, but not always found in textbooks. She turned to American teen series and comedies to immerse herself in the kind of language that is spoken on the streets. By doing this, she gained a much deeper understanding of how English is used in everyday life, including slang, intonation, and even humor. Aisha's story shows us the value of exposing ourselves to a variety of content to become familiar with different registers of language. We also explored some practical tips, such as using subtitles wisely. Starting with subtitles in English can be a great way to connect what you hear with the written words, but the real magic happens when you challenge yourself to watch without them. It helps your brain make direct connections between the sounds and meanings, which accelerates your learning process. The technique of shadowing was another useful strategy we discussed. By repeating what you hear in real time, trying to imitate the pronunciation and intonation, you train your mouth and ears to use the language more fluently. It's like practicing alongside an actor or podcast host. It may feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll notice improvements in both your pronunciation and overall fluency. Another great tip was the challenge of watching one scene a day. Just pick a short scene from a movie or series, watch it several times, and focus on the details. Repeat the lines out loud, and really try to understand the language used. Doing this every day for a week can help you get comfortable with new vocabulary and expressions, and before you know it, you'll be speaking with more confidence. Throughout today's episode, we've also discussed common mistakes to avoid. One of the biggest pitfalls is watching content without truly engaging with it. It's easy to fall into the trap of passively watching, but if you want to learn, you need to actively listen and reflect on what you hear. And remember, don't worry about understanding every single word. The goal is to get the general idea and to feel more comfortable with the language bit by bit. Now that we've covered all these valuable strategies, I want to encourage you to take action. Don't let this information sit in the back of your mind. Put it to work. Tomorrow, try watching a short scene from a movie or series with subtitles, or perhaps you could listen to a podcast episode during your commute, just like Daniel did. Choose one small action to focus on and see how it changes your approach to learning English. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. By subscribing, you ensure that you'll never miss an episode, and it helps us continue to grow our community of learners. Also, if you found today's episode helpful, it would mean so much if you could leave a like and share it with a friend who might also benefit from these tips. Every little bit helps us reach more people and create even better content for you. Remember, the journey to fluency isn't a race. It's about taking small steps, practicing every day, and enjoying the process. So let's keep moving forward together. Make sure to come back for more practical advice and stories to help you on your English learning adventure. As always, thank you for being part of the English Talk community. I'm so glad to have you here, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with English.